All right, everyone, before we get started today, I need to tell you about our amazing teammates at Darby Communications. If you run an outdoor, an endurance, or an active lifestyle brand, there is no better PR or digital marketing belay partner or drinking buddy than Darby. They can help your business reach new heights, and they might just keep you from falling on your ass. Since we started working with Darby, more and more people have been reaching out to us here at the Rock Fight because of that messaging. Look, guys, if they can help us, they can help anybody. Hit them up at darbycommunications.com. Do it today.
Rock fight, rock fight, rock fight, rock fight, rock fight, rock fight.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today I'm joined by Rock Fight consigliere Eoin Comerford for a special reaction episode to talk about emerging news that Jackson Hole's Stio is up for sale. This is a special episode. We're going to skip the normal intro and programming reminders since we're recording on an off day. And thanks for coming into the office today. Oh, and I know it's late your time. It's keep you late,
That's okay. I'm expecting overtime pay for this.
God, we have to do that someday. Are we always going to go hourly? I think this is going to be a salary job eventually.
You think? Something would be nice. A free pair of shoes. I'll take anything at this point.
Well, we can probably make that happen.
Right.
It's the outdoor industry.
Yeah, true.
You want some Nordis?
Yeah, actually, I love some Nordis.
Oh, my God. We should make that happen. All right, so earlier today, one of our loyal listeners reached out and directed us to a story on pehub.com, an article by a gentleman named Michael Shoek. The story details that Stio is indeed up for sale, a process that reportedly started in early February. We have not been able to independently confirm that story, but based off the level of detail, it would appear this to be accurate. And per that article, all of the players that we're about to name and were named in that story were given the opportunity to comment. We're going to talk about all of those in a second. We'll also have it linked in the show notes. But let's just start kind of big picture here. Owen, are you surprised at the news that Stio is up for sale?
Not really. According to this article, Stio actually hit 100 million in sales last year. And that is kind of a milestone that a lot of companies look to say, okay, these guys are big, they're the real deal. And you can typically get maybe a little bit of a bump in valuation for a company that has hit that scale. Like, for example, when Columbia acquired Prana, it was right around that same kind of size as well. So, yeah, it does open up the doors. Also, the other thing I would say is I took a look at the investment site called Traxon.com, Traxcn, kind of like Crunchbase. And some of these firms, Carp Riley, PE firm Carp Riley, and Sandberg's Capital, they've been invested since August of 2014. So over 10 years.
Okay.
And, typically for most private equity firms, they like to be in a deal for 3 years on the low side, maybe 5, 7 at the high end, right?
Yeah, 10's long.
10 is long. It's long. And so they were looking for probably the opportunity to be able to get out, and they figured, hey, now's as good a time as any. Let's see what we can do. Deals are happening. Let's make sure that we're in play.
Did you find out how much that's been raised over that time?
Yeah, well, again, according to this site, and I would say some of these sites are not always totally accurate, but according to this site, it's $42.6 million, which, that's a chunk of change for a company of this size, doing 100 million. And the most recent was 20 million from Lago Innovation back in May of 23. So, 18-ish months ago. I guess more than that, but almost 2 years ago. And that was characterized as a debt equity raise, which is interesting. So it's hard to tell, trying to read between the lines there. I think there was definitely, part of it was a term loan, part of it was equity. So, there's going to be probably some debt on the balance sheet as well.
So one thing I thought that was interesting about this, and one reason we wanted to get together and chat about it is, this is kind of an interesting time in the world.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've heard it's unprecedented, Colin. I've heard that.
I think we probably said those words on this podcast. We're 2 days out for recording Monday's episode, where I'm sure we're going to be talking about some of the macroeconomic forces that are going to come into play in this conversation. But so with that all in mind, is now a good time to be trying to sell an outdoor company?
Well, I mean, I think the question is, when has it ever been a good time to sell an outdoor company?
Like 1999 was
Oh, you're
probably
right.
pretty good.
99 was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Moose Jaw sold in 2007. That was pretty good. Since
Yeah.
then, I don't know. I went through a couple of sale processes myself back in Moose Jaw, and yeah, it was bumpy. But what I would say is, if this reporting is correct, the sale process started in early February, which
Hmm.
means that, and JP Morgan is the investment banker that they have. It means they've been planning this for months, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, JP
Yeah.
Morgan has probably been involved for at least a few months before that. And then there was a whole banker selection process even before that. So, we're talking at least November, I would say this started. And, post election, things were looking good. The M&A people were kind of, getting lathered up over a Trump administration. When this thing went live in early February, we were actually at record stock market, S&P, yada yada,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yep.
things were looking like, whoa, we're off to the races here. Obviously, things have changed just a tad
Last
since
couple
then.
months. Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
and even like we talked about on our pod here a couple of weeks ago. Uh, Early part of this year, I think people were relatively bullish on the industry. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I think things have just soured a little bit, but you never know. I mean, these
Hmm.
kinds of acquisitions hopefully are with more of a long term eye.
Well, one interesting thing that was in the article on PE Hub, they mentioned some of the suitors that are listed, and some of the initial targets were, quote, a handful of strategic suitors, including YETI Holdings and Columbia Sportswear. YETI just can't. How can we go a week without talking about YETI
Love
on
those
the
guys.
podcast? Right. Over the past few weeks, apparently the seller has opened up to other private equity suitors. So let's just start with sort of the outdoor names here. Like, okay, why would YETI and also Columbia have interest in Stio? I did look it up before we hopped on. So I think Columbia's last acquisition was Prana, which has been 2014. So it's been a minute since they've bought anybody. At least that's the last one I found. I don't think there's been anything since.
Yeah.
So, but why would YETI and Columbia be interested in owning Stio?
Well, I think that I'm going to flip it around a little bit and say is why would JP Morgan think that Yeti and Columbia would be interested in Stio? And well, no, because here's the thing. First of all, generally speaking, you are always going to get a better price from a strategic than you are from PE. PE just looks at the
Hmm.
numbers. They just look at the financials. That's all they really care about. Whereas a strategic is exactly that. They are strategic. So there are synergies where they can, bring like let's say a Columbia, for example, or to buy Steel. Imagine the synergies there in terms of development resources, in terms of
Right.
real estate and all of the back office stuff that it takes to run a big apparel company. So yeah, there will be all kinds
Hmm.
of synergies there, right? Um, so that's the first part that I would say is that's why they want to go with strategics. And then the part of the issue with a deal of this is that it's going to be quite sizable. I'm sure they're looking for more than 100 million is probably what they're looking for as a price tag
Hmm.
here. And so that kind of limits the field. Who has the wherewithal to do those deals within the outdoor industry? It's a pretty small group. I mean, you look historically, you've got like a VF Corp, right? Obviously, been very
I was just
acquisitive.
about to say that those guys are on the injured reserve list
Right,
right
exactly. I
now.
mean, they could have made sense, except that they're working to get their debt down, so that they're not a good
Right.
option.
Right.
Columbia though has zero debt, over a half a billion in cash on the balance sheet at the end of last year. So makes a lot of sense on the
Yeah.
face of it. But as you said, it's been over 10 years since they made an acquisition. Those acquisitions haven't all gone terribly well. Some of them have had good times and bad times. There was some great times at Sorel. Things are tougher there now. I think early days on Prana were good. For a long time, obviously Mountain Hardware had a tough time. It's starting to come out of that, but with all that, I just don't think that Columbia is super excited to take on another acquisition right now. The feeling I get from them is that they really want to focus on the Columbia brand and building that
Yeah.
and not be distracted by another acquisition.
Dave, producer Dave floated me a few stats before we hit record on Sorel. And again, this is, Google results. So like maybe there's some inaccuracies here. I think it was around 2008. I think Columbia acquired them. Do you remember for how much?
No idea.
8 million.
Whoa.
You know what they were last year?
Well, that's
300 million.
There you go. Well, that one worked out.
That one worked out okay.
Yeah.
Again, take that with a grain of salt. There might be that was a we're just kind of doing some picking around on Columbia, but still, even if it's close to that, not bad, Columbia.
Yeah, but they're not gonna buy a Stio for $8 million. I'll tell you that much.
No, and it's also for then. I mean, if they're worth 100, like you said, they're going to spend more than that, and they're the core Columbia line and the Mountain Hardwear line. Just if I've ever had a criticism on Stio, it's kind of like they are the classic example of like cover up the label and tell me which brand you're looking at. No offense, Stio, it's very much it's an outdoor brand, and so how do you stand apart in that portfolio?
Exactly. I mean they've built out a really nice niche for themselves, but it isn't incredibly differentiated product. If we're being honest, it's good. It's quality product. It's developed in Jackson Hole, Colin. I don't know if you know that. Mountain lifestyle.
Well, or is it we learned, hey, let's leave Mountain Hardwear alone and look what happens because they have a resurgence. Sure. And they're like, well, let's add a Stio. They're doing pretty well. Like we could probably help them out. We could maybe get some of their costs down, add some infrastructure, and let them just do their thing. I would. You're making a face, so you're not buying it.
I'm not buying it because I just don't think that Stio is different enough from what they have. Right. Because the thesis behind Mountain Hardwear when they bought them was, hey, Mountain Hardwear is a premium version of Columbia to a degree. We can actually, take all of the Columbia bespoke fabrics, slap them in, put a Mountain Hardwear logo on it and charge,
it elevates 50% the Columbia brand.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just didn't work. So,
no.
So anyway, I don't think that Columbia is the answer. And then YETI.
All right. Yeah, let's get into YETI.
Oof. YETI
is this it? Is this apparel time for YETI?
Well, YETI also has the cash, so that they have over 350 million as of last year, so they could do something. They have been acquisitive. They just bought Mystery Ranch, obviously. They don't really have much of an apparel business. It's there, but it's mainly logo wear. Yeah, exactly. Right, it's hats, it's hoodies, it's stuff. I mean, it's. I'm sure it's very nice stuff. It's YETI after all, but it's nothing super exciting. And Stio is a premium brand from a price perspective. I would say it's not like premium, but it's up there. It's got a good reputation, I think, for quality. So could be a fit. I don't know. I feel like if YETI were to get into apparel, they'd want to be like Arc'teryx, that kind of level, right? And so I don't know that Stio is YETI enough for YETI, if you follow me.
What would they do, do you think? Let's just speculate for a minute. I mean, we saw what they did with what they're planning to do with Mystery Ranch, this sort of long, drawn out, like walk to the gallows that Mystery Ranch is currently walking. Is this, do you think they would do something similar? I mean, do you think they'd be like, well, thank you for the infrastructure. We're going to pop a YETI logo on that now. Thanks for your service, Stio. What do you think they would do?
Hard to say, but I mean, obviously we've seen the process with Mountain Hardwear, but that was I think the Mountain Hardwear deal was.
I mean, Mystery Ranch.
Sorry, thank you, Mountain Hardwear. Again, getting all confused here.
YETI bought Mountain Hardwear. We're breaking news on this too. Yeah.
all these M outdoor companies.
Seriously,
I can't even tell you like Mountain Hardwear, Marmot. That's all. Yeah. Anywho, the Mystery Ranch acquisition, I think was $30 million was the price tag there
in that range. Yeah.
So it's one thing to spend $30 million and kind of, make it almost an acqui-hire where you're bringing in all of this capability to then blow that up into a whatever $500 million YETI pack business. I think it's a whole other animal to potentially spend over $100 million on a clothing brand. I don't know. I think YETI, if YETI wanted to get into clothing, I think there's probably different or better brand alignments, and B, I don't know that they would want to stretch this far. They would want to go after somebody that's got a little bit of a different angle, I think.
Well, and then so like you mentioned, maybe because of the market uncertainty of the last couple of months, it sounds like they've moved on now to also include some PE suitors, right? So is that a sign that maybe the Columbia, the YETI type conversations not going the way they wanted to plan, but they're still interested in getting something done? Is that more just based off of the long in the tooth sort of PE investment that they're ready to move on from? Like, what do you take away from the PE suitors part of the story?
I mean, I think if they had got early interest from YETI or Columbia, it would have stopped there. I mean, it's typical in these processes. You go through before you go out to the market, so to speak, you go through an analysis of all the potential targets, and you really narrow it down. You say, hey, we don't want. Quite frankly, I'm sure Stio probably didn't want this news getting out in the middle of a process, but to minimize the chances of that, you keep it pretty low, and you say, hey, listen, let's just reach out to a few people, see if we can get a deal done with them before we go out to the wider market. So chances are, that maybe there hasn't been a fit there, and and as I said, I think that the challenge is that there aren't a ton of people in this space that have the cash and the wherewithal and the interest to do a deal this size. You think about some of the deals that have been done recently. You might look at like Claris, right, that owns Black Diamond. Could make sense, right? They're into sort of the big brands like that. But obviously things have been up and down there with their portfolio, and again, I think they're like, well, let's right the ship over here with Black Diamond before we take anything else on. Not to mention, wherever they are from a cash or debt perspective. And then you look at like a Compass Diversified Holdings that owns 511 Tactical and a bunch of other brands, kind of in a little bit in our space here. Again, things are a little bit tougher right now. Their cash levels are under $100 million, which is really more what you need for operational purposes. Not really for acquisition. So yeah, I just think that there's a limited number of strategics, and once you kind of check down that list, it's like, okay, let's talk to the private equity folks.
Well, we've also reached out to Stio's leadership and PRs, just folks to let them know that we're going to be putting this episode out, and invited them to come on the podcast and talk about it. I guess as we sit here, with the information you have, any predictions to make? Any way you could see how this shakes out? Do you think something happens, or maybe this is just they went through the process and now they're back to just doing what they were doing before?
I think a lot depends upon how much they really want to sell. Because in some cases it's just, hey, let's test the waters, let's see what the market is, and we have a certain price that we want to get, and if we don't get it, so be it. We'll kind of pull it off the market and go. And I've been through that myself. It's a little painful, but it definitely happens. And then there are other scenarios where you've got some private equity investors that are like, no, we that fund has been closed for 5 years now. We need to close this whole thing down and return money to our LPs. We need to get this thing done like this year, even if it's less than what we would otherwise want. So I think a lot will depend upon that as to the urgency of the sale process will drive whether a deal gets done.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. I think did we say at the top that we're breaking news of the outdoor industry? This is PEHub.com. Is not an outdoor industry outlet. So we didn't claim our
you're right.
our birthright here of like, we're breaking news.
We are breaking news. I do. Yeah. I mean, yeah. We're not the originals. I mean, but yeah, no, I think
this looks pretty legit.
This is pretty. Yeah. I think we're breaking news in the outdoor industry.
There we go.
Okay.
I will take that.
All right.
That's all we care about around here anyway. So
yeah.
All right, well, that's it. Thanks. A quick emergency episode on this. Thanks to Eoin for coming in. Make sure that you come back tomorrow. Shante Salabert is going to be back on the pod with producer Dave. We're going to review some new outdoor brand videos. Then come back on Monday to hear Eoin, producer Dave, and I. What are we talking about on Monday? We're talking about something awesome on Monday. I promise you, it's going to be great. You got to come back for it.
Well, it's going to be another Happy Times episode where we're going to talk.
There's so much happiness in the world.
We're going to talk about. I think it is the whole issue with European people boycotting U.S. outdoor brands.
if you want to understand maybe how we pick our topics, just go check out Owen's LinkedIn page and see his posts about U.S. versus European brands and what's going to happen. And there was some spicy conversations over 3 or 4. That's going to be one. You're going to 6 months from now. You're going to be like, so and so commented on this thread because it's just going to keep going.
Well, I'm going to have to delete that thread before I leave the country, so that I don't get stopped by the border patrol.
Oh, you're the guy.
Yeah.
You put that post up on LinkedIn.
Uh-huh.
All right, the Rock Fight's a production of Rock Fight LLC. For Eoin Comerford, I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening, and he's here to take us out. He's always ready for us, even for special reaction episodes. It's Krista Makes. He's going to sing the Rock Fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock